My name is Kendra Lowell. I am 67 years old, a seamstress by trade, a woman trained to fix what is torn. For 40 years, I stitched hems and wedding gowns and torn pockets. I held a family together with the same patience I used on a delicate piece of lace. When people asked what I did for a living, I always answered, I sew. But the truth is, I mended. Clothes, yes, but also tension, silence, and everything that fell apart inside a household that nobody noticed was breaking. I thought the hardest days of my life had already passed. I was wrong, because nothing prepared me for the night I ran toward a hospital room thinking my daughter-in-law might be dying. Nothing prepared me for that whisper. I ran to the hospital to see my daughter-in-law in intensive care. Suddenly, the nurse leaned close, gripping my arm, and whispered to me, "Hide and trust me." I stood frozen behind the door of the next room, my heart pounding. 1 minute later, what I saw on the other side of that door made my blood run cold. People say a mother knows when something is wrong. They never explain that sometimes it is not fear for your child that crushes you. Sometimes it is the realization that the danger is coming from within your own family. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back. Let me tell you who I was before that door. I live alone in a small rental house on the edge of a sleepy coastal town. A wooden porch, a single rocking chair, a kettle that whistles every morning at 6. After my husband passed, the house stopped echoing with footsteps, and the world grew very quiet. My son, Michael, moved 2 states away after marrying Autumn. He said, "Mom, I need space to become who I am meant to be." I said, "All right, because mothers do that." We let go. I built a tiny sewing room in the back of the house. The walls smell like starch and lavender. In a glass jar sits a single object that I guard more carefully than anything I own, a small silver thimble. It belonged to my mother, then to me. Whenever I slip it over my finger, it feels like armor. It reminds me who I used to be. It reminds me that I am not fragile. I am precise. I fix things. But some things cannot be stitched back. Autumn came into my life 5 years ago, and she was sunshine, the gentle kind that does not blind you but warms your bones after a long winter. She was kind, not loud, not showy, the kind of girl who apologizes to plants when she trims their leaves. When Michael brought her home for Thanksgiving, she found me in the kitchen wrestling with pie dough. She placed her small hand over mine, laughed, and said, "Move aside. I grew up with 6 sisters. Dough listens to me." She made the best pie I ever tasted. In that moment, I felt the strange and tender feeling of becoming a mother all over again. Sometimes when we were alone, she would whisper things she never told Michael. Fears, doubts, stories about her childhood. I listened in the same way I sew, carefully, without pulling too hard on the thread. She once said, "You're like the mother I never got to have." I carried that sentence like a small candle inside me. Michael changed slowly. Change never storms in, it creeps. First, I missed phone calls, then short visits, then the day he introduced me to Conrad Pierce, his new financial advisor. I remember Conrad's handshake. It was too smooth, too confident, like a man who learned how to manipulate something more fragile than money, trust. He started changing Michael's vocabulary. Words like portfolio, asset control, legal guardianship replaced things like family dinner and "Mom, how are you?" I watched my son become someone I didn't recognize, someone whose eyes drifted past people and toward what they could give him. Conrad was always by his side, polished wristwatch, expensive leather shoes, a smile that felt like a hook. Then Autumn got sick. At first, it was dizziness. Then fainting spells, then hospital visits with no explanation. Every time I called Michael, he brushed it off. Stress, exhaustion. You know how she overthinks, Mom. But Autumn didn't overthink. She felt. She was all heart. The night everything shattered, I was finishing a hem on a prom dress when the phone rang. The number flashed unknown. When I answered, Michael sounded breathless. "Mom, Autumn's in intensive care. Get to the hospital, please." There was no hesitation. I grabbed my coat, the keys, and without thinking, the silver thimble from the jar. It slipped into my pocket by muscle memory, a soldier taking its place. Hospitals at night are a strange kind of cold. The fluorescent lights make every tear look louder. My shoes squeaked against the polished floor as I ran. People stared, but I didn't care. My heart beat so violently that I had to push a hand against my chest to hold myself together. That was when a nurse appeared, young, sharp eyes, dark hair pulled back so tightly that nothing escaped. Her name tag read, Naomi Park, RN. She stepped directly into my path and grabbed my arm. Her voice dropped to a whisper, "Hide and trust me." I didn't understand. Why hide? From what? But there was something in her eyes, something urgent, something scared. A nurse sees everything. Nurses do not say things like that unless danger is breathing down their neck. She pushed me gently toward the door of an empty room. I stepped inside, leaving the door open the width of a seam. My heart pounded against my ribs. Every instinct screamed, running to Autumn. Then I heard voices. 2. One male, one female. "I need her signed over. I need legal control before the next transfer," the man said. His voice was crisp, calculated. The woman answered, "She won't wake up. Not as long as I keep adding a few drops to her drinks. The doctors will think it is stress." My blood frozen. I recognized the woman's voice. Autumn's mother. In that moment, as I stood behind the door clutching the silver thimble in my pocket, I understood something powerful. I don't have much, but I have the instinct of a woman who has been forgotten her whole life. And that instinct had just saved someone I love. I used to believe emergencies announce themselves. Sirens, crashing glass, screams. But sometimes disaster arrives as quietly as a vibrating cell phone on a kitchen counter. It was 10:14 p.m. I remember the exact time because I was finishing a hem on a prom dress, the kind made of delicate satin that bruises if you pull the thread too tight. My sewing lamp cast a warm circle over the fabric, and outside my window the world was a watercolor of fog and streetlights. The silver thimble rested on my finger, the metal warm from my touch. I hummed without thinking. I always hummed when I worked alone. It made the house feel less empty. Then the phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, I would let calls like that go to voicemail. But that night, something in my chest tightened. The kind of tightening you can't explain. The kind that mothers recognize before their brains can catch up. I wiped my hands on my old cotton apron and answered. "Hello?" There was frantic breathing, then my son's voice. Michael. Sharp. Panicked. "Mom, Autumn's in the ICU. You need to come. Now." My heart slammed into my ribs. "ICU? What happened?" "They don't know. She passed out again. They're running tests." His voice cracked. "Just get here." The line went dead. No goodbye. No details. Just brutal silence. I stood motionless for a second, the world tilting. Then instinct took over. I grabbed my keys, my purse, and without even realizing it, I slid the silver thimble into my coat pocket like a talisman. Except I didn't grab a coat. I didn't even notice the night air until later when it clawed at my skin. I drove with my hazard lights on, whispering prayers even though I hadn't prayed in years. Please let her be okay. Please. The hospital parking lot was nearly empty. The wind smelled like rain and asphalt. I ran across the pavement, my shoes slapping the wet ground. I could feel cold drops of sweat trickling down my back, the kind that appear not from heat, but pure panic. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and loneliness. A yawning security guard pointed me toward the elevator. 6th floor, intensive care. As the elevator doors closed, my reflection stared back at me. A woman with wind-blown gray hair, eyes too wide, face creased with fear. That was not the version of me Autumn knew. The version she knew was steady, warm, the woman who rolled out pie dough and stitched quilts on quiet Sundays. That thought broke something in me. The elevator chimed. The doors opened to a long corridor washed in pale blue light, and as I walked toward ICU, memories pushed their way in, uninvited, unstoppable. The brain has a cruel way of offering contrast. When we are drowning in fear, suddenly it was not a hospital tile beneath my feet. It was Autumn's kitchen floor, warm with sunlight, a year earlier. She had insisted on baking me a birthday cake from scratch, not a box mix. "Real cake," she had said proudly. "Real butter, real vanilla. You deserve real things, Mom." Mom. The word was fragile in her mouth, as though she feared she might not be allowed to say it. I stood at her kitchen counter, wearing her spare apron, watching her crack eggs with one hand like a magician. Flour dusted her cheeks. A streak of icing landed on her chin when she whipped butter too fast, and we both burst into laughter so pure it echoed like bells. "Do you know why I bake?" she asked, while smoothing the batter into a round pan. "Because Michael loves cake?" She chuckled. "No, I bake when I want something to stay, a little sweetness in a world that moves too fast." I leaned on the counter, charmed by her softness. "Then I guess we're the same. I sew when I want something broken to hold together." She paused. Then she placed her hand lightly over mine. "You fix more than fabric, Kendra." No one had ever said something like that to me, not even my own son. The memory dissolved as fast as it came, because now, instead of the citrus smell of her kitchen, there was antiseptic. Instead of soft jazz coming from her speakers, there was the steady beep, beep, beep of machines monitoring life. I pushed open the ICU doors. A nurse at the front desk lifted her head. "Can I help you?" "My daughter-in-law, Autumn Lowell." My voice shook. "I mean, Autumn Pierce Lowell." She kept her maiden name after marriage, something that made Michael irritated. And for reasons I never understood, it made Conrad, his financial advisor, even more irritated, as though her independence threatened their structure. The nurse typed on her computer. Her expression shifted. "Family only." "I am family." She hesitated. "You're not listed on her emergency contact sheet." My heart dropped. Of course. Michael would have listed Luann, Autumn's mother, and Conrad always hovered, always ready to handle paperwork. The nurse studied me. Maybe she saw the desperation in my eyes. Maybe she recognized the shaking in my hands, the shaking of a woman who has spent her whole life holding everyone else together. She leaned in, lowering her voice. "She was admitted less than an hour ago. The doctor is with her now. Someone will update you." I thanked her and began to walk toward the waiting area, but my feet dragged. Every cell in my body screamed to keep moving, to do something. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, a tunnel of cold light. My mind snapped back again. Autumn placing the finished cake on the table. 21 tiny candles. A crooked, "Happy Birthday, Mom Kendra," written in imperfect purple icing. She had smiled shyly and said, "I know we haven't known each other long, but when I look at you, I see home." And I remember thinking, maybe I didn't lose a son. Maybe I gained a daughter. Now here I was, racing against time, terrified I might lose her. I finally reached the ICU waiting area. I sat down, breathless, pulse thrumming against my throat, hands still gripping the straps of my purse. That was when my phone buzzed again. A text message. From Michael. "Luann and Conrad are already here. Don't make a scene." I stared at the words, "Don't make a scene." The same sentence I'd heard my entire life. A sentence used to silence women like me. I closed my eyes, pressed my thumb against the edge of the silver thimble in my pocket. The metal bit into my skin. A reminder, I am precise. I am steady. I fix what's torn. Even if what is tearing is my own family. The waiting area was too bright, too clean, too quiet. My leg bounced uncontrollably, a nervous habit I thought I had buried years ago. The clock on the wall ticked in slow motion, mocking the panic crawling beneath my skin. Then I saw her, the same nurse from before, Naomi Park. She moved with the kind of urgency only someone who has seen too much suffering can carry. Her eyes scanned the hallway, sharp as a blade. When they landed on me, she walked straight toward me with a purpose that made my stomach drop. "Kendra, come with me," she whispered. I stood. "Is something wrong? Did the doctor say anything about Autumn?" "Not here." Her voice was low but firm. "Follow me now." I didn't argue. I just followed. We walked down a side corridor, away from the waiting area, past a row of closed patient rooms. The farther we went, the colder the air became. The lights overhead flickered, buzzing faintly. My pulse thudded in my ears. Naomi stopped beside an empty patient room. No lights, no sounds. The door stood open just 2 inches. "This room is empty," she said quietly. "Step inside." I hesitated. "Why? What's happening?" Her eyes didn't blink. "You asked what happened to Autumn. This is how you find out." My breath caught. A chill crawled across the back of my neck. "Still?" I stepped inside. The room was dark except for the faint glow from the hallway. Machines stood silent. A bed was stripped bare. The air felt still, like it was holding its breath. Naomi closed the door until only a thin crack remained. "Stand here," she murmured. "Do not make a sound. Whatever you hear, do not open the door." Her fingers briefly squeezed my arm, a gesture of warning, and something else, compassion. She slipped into the hallway and vanished from sight. I stood alone in the dark. My hand drifted to my pocket. Without thinking, I curled my fingers around the silver thimble. The cold metal grounded me, steadied me. It felt like a lifeline. For a moment there was silence, then footsteps. 2 voices entered the room next door. 1 male, 1 female. The man spoke first. Confident, smooth. I knew that voice. Conrad Pierce. "Once we secure medical guardianship, I can finalize the transfer of assets," he said. "Michael trusts me completely. He won't question paperwork." The woman answered, her tone sharp, impatient. "Luann, Autumn's mother." "We cannot afford delays," Luann hissed. "Michael is emotional. He keeps asking for updates. He wants answers." "Leave Michael to me," Conrad replied. "He's eager to prove he can take care of his wife. If he believes responsibility requires control over her decisions, he'll sign anything." My chest tightened. They weren't just manipulating Autumn. They were using my son's love to do it. Paper shuffled. A pen clicked. "Repeat the plan," Conrad said. Luann exhaled loudly. "I already told you." "Say it again. I need to be sure you won't make mistakes." Conrad's tone was slow and clinical, as if he were training someone. Luann's voice lowered. "I will continue adding a few drops to her drinks. The doctors already think the dizziness is stress. They won't question it." My entire body went ice cold. A few drops, stress, Autumn, collapsing, the unexplained weakness, the fainting. The air felt too thin to breathe. Conrad asked, "And once she's fully incapacitated?" "Then," Luann said, "we move to the next step, medical guardianship. After that, access to the business accounts. Michael will hand everything over." I pressed my hand over my mouth to smother the gasp clawing its way out of my throat. Autumn wasn't sick. They were poisoning her. My blood roared like a storm in my ears. I felt heat rise in my chest, fury mixed with disbelief. My fingers dug into the silver thimble so hard that its edges bit into my skin. Suddenly, I moved. My body acted before my brain could stop it. I reached for the door, ready to burst into the hallway, ready to scream, ready to throw every truth at them. But a hand wrapped firmly around my wrist. Naomi. Her grip was steady, unshakable. Her face appeared in the dark, illuminated only by the faint sliver of hallway light. She shook her head slowly, deliberately. Her eyes said, "Not yet. This is bigger than you think." I mouthed soundlessly, "They're hurting her." Naomi leaned in, her lips barely moving. "I know. I have been documenting everything." Her words hit me like a wave. She knew. Naomi guided my hand away from the doorknob. I could feel the beat of her pulse under her fingers, strong, steady. "If you charge out there now, they'll deny everything," she breathed. "They will claim you misheard, and legally, nothing will stick without proof. Proof. Not instinct, not rage. Proof." My breath trembled against the back of my throat. She slowly released my wrist, but her gaze stayed locked on mine, demanding trust. "Do you want to save Autumn?" Naomi asked. I nodded. Then listen to me. Stay silent. Let them talk. Let them incriminate themselves. We will get a recording. We will get signatures. But not if you rush in and blow it apart. Silence. A different kind of power. From the next room, Conrad continued talking. With medical control, I handle the accounts. You will get your portion. I will get mine. Luann let out a bitter laugh. Autumn always thought she was better than me, always looking down on where she came from. Consider this. Balance. My stomach churned. No, I whispered, hardly hearing my own voice. Autumn never looked down on anyone. Naomi tightened her grip on my arm gently. Just hold on. My body shook with rage. Not loud rage, cold rage, quiet rage, the kind that builds a plan. Finally, footsteps moved away. The voices faded. A door clicked shut. Naomi waited a full 10 seconds before letting go of my arm. Only then did she speak. Now you understand. I leaned back against the wall, suddenly weak. He's using her mother to poison her. Naomi nodded once. I suspected. Tonight confirmed it. I swallowed hard. Why would a mother do that to her own daughter? Her voice softened. Some people do not love. They own. My heart cracked open. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, legs trembling. Without thinking, I pressed the silver thimble into my palm. You will not fight them alone, Naomi said. She crouched beside me, her eyes holding a fierce, protective fire. We use the system. We get evidence. We take them down the right way. My voice fractured. I almost ruined everything by bursting in. You almost did, she said gently. But you didn't. She held out her hand, palm up. Stand up. Autumn needs you to be steady. I placed my hand in hers. As Naomi pulled me to my feet, something clicked into place inside me, a truth stronger than fear. I may be 67, I may be quiet, I may be overlooked, but I have the instinct of a woman who has survived a lifetime of being ignored, and this time, they would not ignore me. Naomi led me down another hallway, one far quieter than the ICU. No footsteps, no alarms, no rushing stretchers, only the muted hum of fluorescent lights and the steady vibration in my own chest. My breathing felt loud in the quiet space. She opened a door marked Consultation Room C. Inside, the room was small. One round table, 3 chairs, a box of tissues, a computer monitor, a room designed for the delivery of bad news. Naomi shut the door behind us and locked it. My palms were sweating. The silver thimble felt heavy in my pocket, as if the metal knew what my heart refused to accept. From this moment forward, nothing in my life would be the same. Naomi sat across from me and pulled out her hospital tablet. Before we go any further, she said, you need to see something. Her voice wasn't loud, yet it held the weight of something irreversible. She tapped the screen. An audio file appeared. File 16B, hallway conversation. Time-stamped. She pressed play. Immediately, I heard their voices, Conrad and Luann's, captured with clarity. I will continue adding a few drops to her drinks. The doctors already think it's stress. My stomach twisted. I gripped the armrest of the chair, fingers trembling. The recording continued with Conrad's voice, smooth and calculated. Medical guardianship gives us access. Once Michael signs, it's over. The audio stopped. The room fell silent. I pressed my knuckles to my lips. How long have you known? Naomi exhaled slowly. Long enough to be afraid Autumn wouldn't make it without intervention. The sentence hit me like a blow. You knew, I whispered. You suspected this was happening, and you didn't. Her voice cut in, surprisingly sharp. I didn't have evidence. Suspicion doesn't save lives. Proof does. Her words echoed what she had whispered in the dark earlier. Stay silent. Let them incriminate themselves. I swallowed hard. You risked everything to get that recording. The nurse nodded, and I'd do it again. Before I could respond, the door opened. A woman stepped inside, carrying a leather folder. Tall, poised, sharp navy suit. A long braid fell down her back. She radiated the kind of calm strength that silence cannot suppress. "Mrs. Lowell," she said, "I'm Priya Patel, legal counsel for the hospital." I straightened instinctively. Priya extended her hand. Her grip was firm but warm. Her eyes studied me, not with pity but with respect, as if she already knew what I had endured. "Naomi briefed me," Priya said, sitting down between us. "Before we move forward, I need to confirm something. Are you emotionally prepared to be part of a legal intervention?" I blinked. "Legal intervention?" "Yes." Priya opened the leather folder, revealing documents filled with signatures, highlighted paragraphs, and official seals. "If we can confirm medical endangerment and intentional interference, the hospital will petition for immediate emergency protection for Autumn. We also may need testimony from you." Testimony. The word tightened around my ribs. I wasn't used to being listened to. I wasn't used to speaking for myself. Naomi rested her hand gently on the table, close, not touching me. A gesture that said, "You are not alone." Priya continued, "Your son is being manipulated into signing legal guardianship. If he signs, Conrad and Luann gain control of Autumn's medical decisions and potentially her financial assets." "She doesn't have assets," I blurted. "They can't get anything." Priya's eyebrow lifted. "Your son has a pending business valuation. Conrad knows this. If Autumn loses competency, Conrad could use guardianship laws to negotiate asset transfers. Marital community property laws would allow access. The room spun slightly. I whispered, "So this isn't just about money?" "No," Priya replied. "This is about power." My pulse surged. "Why are you helping us?" Priya's eyes softened. "Because 10 years ago, my aunt died from medical neglect orchestrated by her own family. She didn't have anyone to speak for her. I promised myself if I ever saw a similar situation, I wouldn't stay silent. A reflective foil. She was what I could be, if someone had protected me earlier in my life." I stared at Naomi. "You said you'd seen this before." Naomi's jaw clenched. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. "When I was a new nurse," she said, "a patient kept arriving unconscious. Her husband insisted she had fainting spells. Doctors thought it was anemia. One night I found crushed pills hidden in his jacket pocket." My breath caught. "I reported it," she continued, "but without proof. No one listened. She died 2 months later." She swallowed hard. "I never forgave myself. The room was so quiet I could hear the ventilation system. "I will not let that happen again, Naomi said. My throat tightened. Suddenly, something inside me shifted. For so many years, I believed my purpose was to fix others silently. Now, silence itself was the weapon harming someone I loved. Priya placed a document in front of me and turned it so the signature line faced me. "This authorizes us to initiate emergency protective action. Without your signature, our legal reach is limited." The page blurred as my eyes filled with tears. Legal action. Against my son's choices. Against Autumn's own mother. "What if Michael hates me?" I whispered. Priya leaned closer. "Do you want him to hate you temporarily? Or do you want him to lose the woman who loves him?" I closed my eyes. In the darkness, I saw Autumn's face, the way she smiled when she baked my birthday cake, the smudge of flour on her cheek, the way she whispered, "You feel like home. Home is not letting someone die." My voice shook. "Tell me what I need to do." Priya handed me a pen. I removed the silver thimble from my pocket and placed it on my finger. The metal slid onto my skin with a soft click. It was absurd, wearing a sewing tool for something this monumental. But maybe it wasn't absurd. Maybe it was right. A symbol of what I had done all my life, fixing what is torn. My signature wavered only for a second. Then, with a steady breath, I signed my name. Kendra Lowell. When I looked up, Naomi's eyes shined with pride. Priya stamped the paper. The sound echoed like a gavel. Decision made. Line drawn. War silently declared. "You just saved Autumn's life," Priya said. Naomi squeezed my shoulder. "Sometimes silence is not surrender. Sometimes it is a strategy." I exhaled shakily. Silence is also an action. Yes, Priya replied softly. And in this case, it is the action that will. When then, for the first time in years, I felt power move through me. Not rage, not noise, conviction. I had spent a lifetime being quiet because I didn't think my voice mattered. Tonight I learned something new. Silence can be a cage or a weapon, and I had finally chosen which one it would be. Naomi walked me back toward the ICU. This time, every step echoed differently, not from fear, but from purpose. I had signed the authorization. The investigation had officially begun. Somewhere behind these doors, attorneys were being contacted, records were being secured, and security footage was being locked from deletion. But none of that mattered more than this moment. I needed to see her. We reached the glass doors of the intensive care unit. Naomi typed a code into the keypad. The door unlocked with a soft click. "Go ahead," she whispered. I pushed the door open. The air hit me instantly. Cold, sanitized, sterile. Machines hummed, the steady and mechanical, like artificial breathing. The monitors cast a faint blue glow across her bed. That was when I saw Autumn. Her skin looked pale, almost translucent under the fluorescent light. Her long hair, usually so vibrant and full of motion, lay flat against the pillow. A nasal cannula delivered oxygen, and an IV line disappeared into the crook of her arm. She looked still in a way that frightened me. I stepped closer, my footsteps slow, deliberate. I didn't want to disturb anything. I didn't want to disturb her. Her hand rested outside the blanket, limp. The IV line taped to her skin looked like some fragile lifeline holding her to this world. I lifted my own hand instinctively, wanting to take hers, but I stopped myself before touching the tubes. My fingers hovered inches above hers, close, but not touching. Show, don't tell. I breathed in. Her hand was so cold, cold like a piece of glass left on a winter windowsill. "Mom is here, Autumn," I whispered. My voice cracked around the words. The room was quiet enough that the sound of her monitor felt like an answer. I leaned closer, keeping my voice low. "I don't understand how a mother could do this to her own child." The silence swallowed the question. I imagined the little girl Autumn once was, running barefoot in summer grass, laughing with scraped knees and sunburned cheeks. I imagined Luann pushing her on a swing, brushing her hair, cutting the crust off her sandwiches. Where does that kind of love go? Does it evaporate? Does ambition dry it out? Does greed replace it? I swallowed tightly and let my hand hover over her once more, not touching the IV. "I don't understand," I repeated. I closed my eyes, letting myself remember her differently. Just last year, Autumn had shown up at my door with a strawberry cake, pink frosting, messy handwriting, and too many sprinkles. She had laughed when I pretended to blow out invisible candles. "You deserve a cake," she said. "You deserve to be celebrated." That night, she hugged me before leaving. Her perfume smelled like orange blossoms. Her hair brushed my cheek. "Thank you for letting me love you," she whispered in the dark. I didn't know then that she had been starved of affection her whole life. I didn't know she had chosen me to be her safe place. Now she lay here, wrapped in wires, because the people who were supposed to protect her had decided she was more valuable unconscious. I leaned forward and rested my hand on the bed rail. The cool metal grounded me. "You didn't marry my son for what he could give you," I said softly. "You married him because you loved the way he loved me." My eyes burned. "And I loved the way you loved him." Her monitor beeped again. Steady, unchanging, but somehow I felt her listening. "You don't have to wake up yet," I whispered. "Just keep fighting. Keep breathing. I will handle the rest." The door behind me opened quietly. Naomi stepped inside, holding a warm blanket folded neatly in her arms. "She gets cold easily," Naomi murmured. "Her body temperature drops when she's under stress." I nodded. She always carried a sweater, even in the summer. Naomi smiled gently and draped the blanket over Autumn's shoulders, layering warmth without disturbing the wires. "You can hold her hand if you want," she offered. But I didn't move. I kept my hand hovering above Autumn's. close enough to feel her presence, far enough not to disrupt the IV that might one day save her. "Not yet," I whispered. "I need to earn that moment." Naomi looked at me, puzzled. I explained softly, "If I touch her now, I'll break, and I can't break, not until she's safe." Naomi nodded with quiet understanding. She stepped back, giving me space. Eventually, she slipped out the door, leaving me alone with the sound of the monitors. I stayed like that, my hand hovering for a long time. Eventually, I spoke again. "You always said my quiet was comforting," I murmured. "So I'll give you that. I'll be calm. I'll be steady. I won't panic." A deep breath filled my lungs. "But I'm not afraid anymore." The words sounded foreign, but true. I wasn't afraid. Not of Luann, not of Conrad, not of what would happen next. Autumn deserved someone who would fight for her without noise or apology, someone who wouldn't turn away from the ugliness of what was happening. I straightened my back, wiped my tears, and whispered, "You gave me a reason to speak." The monitor beeped, once, louder than before. I looked up sharply, heart pounding, but a nurse walking by glanced at the machine and gave a reassuring nod. "She's stable," the nurse said, "just reacting to your voice." My breath caught. She heard me. I leaned closer, letting my voice drop to a promise. "I'm not leaving. Not this time." Outside the glass wall, the hospital continued its rhythm. Doctors walked briskly. Phones rang. Life went on. But inside this room, time held still. I placed the silver thimble gently on the bed beside Autumn's hand. A symbol, a vow, a message. "I will stitch your life back together," I whispered, "even if it takes every thread I have left." Silence wrapped around us like a blanket, and I stayed, hand hovering, protecting her without touching. Mom is here. The next morning, fatigue sat deep in my bones. I had not slept. I had not even sat down properly. I remained beside Autumn's bed, watching every rise and fall of her chest as if my attention alone kept her alive. The door suddenly opened. Michael, my son. His tie was crooked, as if he had dressed in a rush. But the expensive watch Conrad gave him gleamed under the ICU lights. He scanned the room, then stopped when he saw me. "Mom," he exhaled, relieved. "I came as soon as they called." He walked toward the bed, reached for Autumn's hand, and then flinched at the IV lines just like I had. He settled for pressing the blanket instead. "Hey, darling, I'm here," he whispered. My heart softened until another voice sliced through the air behind him. "Well, good, we're all here." Luann entered with Conrad at her shoulder. Together, they looked like a polished brochure for success, tailored clothes, perfect hair, a quiet arrogance that filled the room before they spoke. I instinctively stepped in front of Autumn, blocking their view. Michael frowned at me. "Mom, what are you doing?" I chose my words carefully. "Just giving her space." Conrad smirked. "That's not what it looks like." Michael turned fully toward me now. His shoulders tightened, his voice hardened, laced with frustration. "They told me you accused them of poisoning Autumn." Poisoning. The word in his voice sounded absurd, ridiculous, dramatic, exactly how Conrad and Luann wanted him to perceive it. "I didn't accuse—" "Mom," he cut me off. "Naomi already told me you were hysterical last night." Hysterical. Such a convenient word to dismiss a woman. I kept my tone steady. "I wasn't hysterical. I was observant." "And paranoid," Conrad added with a shrug. Luann turned up her performance. She wiped a tear that didn't exist and whispered, "I don't know how much more I can take. I love my daughter." I stared at her, cold, controlled. A mother who loves does not plan withdrawals from her coma daughter's bank account. But Michael only saw tears. "Mom, you need to stop," he hissed. "You're making this worse. She's in ICU. She doesn't need drama." Drama. Because that's what women like me become when we finally speak. "Michael," I said quietly, "please, look at me." He did. "You know Autumn. You know her heart. Do you really believe she would want her mother and her financial advisor handling her care behind your back?" He blinked rapidly, confusion, denial. Then he reached the easiest conclusion. They're just trying to help. Help? My voice stayed soft. Autumn has been in and out of the hospital for weeks. You think exhaustion did this? He rubbed the back of his neck. Work has been insane. I haven't been home much. Conrad stepped closer to Michael, placing a confident hand on his shoulder. This is why we discussed guardianship, Conrad said smoothly. My blood frozen. Guardianship. Conrad met Michael's eyes. If you sign the petition today, we can take over decisions until she wakes. It's temporary. Temporary. That word carries more death sentences than gunshots. Naomi appeared at the doorway and subtly leaned against the frame, watching, listening. Michael rubbed his temples, clearly overwhelmed. Maybe that's best. I don't have time to sit at the hospital all day. I need to keep the company running. There it was, the wedge Conrad had been hammering for months, Michael's insecurities. You're responsible for payroll, Conrad continued. You're the decision maker. Michael straightened, posture filling with borrowed confidence. Then he turned to me. And Mom, actually, this brings up something I meant to talk to you about. I felt something shift in my stomach. Danger without volume. We were thinking, he began, it doesn't make sense for you to live alone in a big house anymore. My spine stiffened. What do you mean? His tone turned casual, as if he were negotiating a business deal instead of gutting me. If you sell your house, we could split the money for the family. You'd move into a smaller place or assisted living. Assisted living. Luann and Conrad stood still, watching him deliver their idea as if he had thought of it himself. For the family, he repeated. Family. I had spent 40 years being that word and was now being asked to fund it. So, let me be clear, I said. You want to sell my house, my home, the only thing I have. Michael breathed out impatiently. It's not just yours, we're family. Everything should be shared. My heart cracked, not loud, but sharp. I had spent decades sewing Halloween costumes, waking at dawn to pack lunches, selling my jewelry to help him launch his company. And now, I was a line item on a spreadsheet. Michael, I whispered, you would take my house? It's not taking, he insisted. It's reallocating. Conrad nodded approvingly, and Luann smiled. Subtle, victorious. The room blurred for a moment, not from tears, but from disbelief. When I spoke again, my voice was steady enough to cut steel. Trust, I said, is not picking up a pen. Trust is opening your eyes. Michael blinked. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't answer, because silence was now my strategy. Naomi walked into the room, clipboard in her hand, eyes clear. Michael, she said politely, may I speak with your mother privately? He hesitated, then sighed, leaving the room with Conrad and Luann trailing behind. When the door shut, Naomi turned to me. You handled that perfectly. I shook my head. I feel like I'm losing him. No, she said. He's losing himself. You're just watching. Her words hit me. Michael's footsteps faded down the hallway. I looked back at Autumn. The monitor continued its steady rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. I wasn't alone, and I wasn't powerless. Outside the glass, I could see Michael talking to Conrad and Luann. He nodded, absorbing their words like gospel. Then Luann touched his arm and leaned in. Manipulating him with maternal tenderness, she never gave her own daughter. Naomi followed my gaze. He doesn't know he's being groomed. Most people don't, I murmured. They only realize when the cost becomes irreversible. My palm brushed the silver thimble still lying beside Autumn's hand, stitching, repairing, saving, not through noise, but through persistence. I whispered to Autumn, soft, steady. Hold on, one of us still knows the truth, and I wasn't going to lose this, or them, to silence. Not again. Priya returned later that afternoon with a printed packet and a cup of water she pressed into my hands before I could protest. Naomi trailed behind her, closing the consultation door softly, discreetly. Both women exchanged a quick, silent look, the kind that carried urgency. Priya spread documents across the table. Today is not about confronting them, she said. Today is about letting them believe they've won. I frowned. I don't understand. Naomi leaned forward. The more confident they feel, the more reckless they become. Priya tapped her pen gently on the table. And reckless people make mistakes we can use. I took a slow breath, absorbing the strategy. It wasn't passive. It was intentional. So you're asking me to pretend I don't know anything? Exactly, Priya replied. Let them talk. Let them reveal themselves. Let them hand us the proof. Naomi added, we're setting a trap made of silence. A trap for them. I swallowed. I don't know if I'm that good at pretending. Priya studied me, her expression calm and assured. You've spent your whole life being underestimated. Use that. The sentence struck deeper than I expected. Underestimated, ignored, overlooked. There was a strange power in those words. I had never seen them as anything but a wound. Now, apparently, they could become a weapon. Naomi placed something on the table, my silver thimble. You left this beside Autumn earlier, she said, almost like you were offering her your strength. I reached out and picked it up. The cool metal pressed into my palm. My fingers curled around it. Gently. When I slid it onto my finger, it clicked softly, almost ceremonial. Naomi smiled. Round 2. For the first time that night, I felt ready. When I stepped back into the ICU hallway, Luann was already there, pacing dramatically, dabbing her eyes with a tissue like she expected cameras. Kendra, she exclaimed, rushing toward me with exaggerated relief. We were worried about you. You've been gone so long. Her tone was pure performance. I forced a small, naive smile. Carefully, intentionally. I just needed some air. She touched my arm lightly, a rehearsed gesture. I understand. This is overwhelming for all of us. There it was. Her version of compassion, soft enough to confuse, sharp enough to manipulate. Conrad lingered a few steps behind her, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Michael stood near him, torn between us, still unable to see the strings being pulled. No one noticed that Naomi stood halfway down the corridor, clipboard in hand, watching. Priya stood farther back, pretending to review paperwork, but positioned close enough to hear every word. And I stepped into the role they expected me to play. Naive, emotional, alone. Luann placed her hand over her heart. We're all just trying to do what's best for Autumn. I know, I replied softly, lowering my gaze. You're her mother. Even if the word tasted like ash. She softened, thinking she had won. She's my only child, she said, voice trembling on cue. I can't lose her. I can't lose her either, I whispered. Her eyes flickered with something sharp, irritation, that I had dared to express equal claim to Autumn, but she quickly masked it. We're family, she emphasized. We should make decisions together. I nodded slowly. Of course. Her body eased, shoulders relaxing with triumph. Michael stepped forward. Mom, we thought maybe we could meet later to discuss the guardianship paperwork. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face neutral, lids lowered. Guardianship? I repeated softly, as if I barely remembered. Luann jumped in. Just until she's better. Temporary. Temporary. Conrad echoed like an echo chamber. I tilted my head, letting my voice turn hesitant. I want to understand. Could you walk me through what I would need to sign? 3 faces lit up. Michael stepped closer, optimism rising in his voice. Really? You'll listen? I nodded. Conrad looked at me like I was a naive checkbook on 2 legs. Luann slipped her arm through mine, guiding me down the hall. Let's sit and talk, just us, woman to woman. Behind her, Naomi exchanged a glance with Priya, who gave a nearly imperceptible nod. The trap was working. Luann led me into the family consultation lounge. The lighting was dimmer here, warmer, as if the room wanted to comfort people before breaking them. She pulled me to a small couch and sat close, too close, invading my space with counterfeit tenderness. Conrad stood behind us, arms folded, supervising. Michael sat across from me, resting forward, elbows on knees. "Mom, this would really help us. If you sign, everything moves smoothly." His eyes were hopeful, trusting, completely unaware. It hurt, but I smiled, fragile and uncertain. "What exactly happens legally?" Conrad was eager to educate. "You and Michael sign over temporary medical guardianship. Then Luann and I handle decisions. We take the pressure off you." Off him, he meant. Off the person easiest to manipulate. "And when Autumn wakes up?" I asked gently. "Well," Luann said, tucking her hair behind her ear, "we'll evaluate then. No rush." Evaluate. Power never lets go without a fight. "So," I murmured, keeping my tone airy, "I just signed something?" Michael brightened, relieved. "Yes, that's it, just a signature." My hand slid into my pocket, the silver thimble pressed into my skin. Strength, memory, purpose. I raised my head slowly. Enough for Michael to see the softness he recognized, but also enough for Luann to see compliance. "I want to do what's best for Autumn," I said quietly. Relief spilled across their faces. They believed me. They thought I was folding. Michael reached over, squeezing my hand. "Thank you, Mom. I knew you'd understand." I squeezed back. Gently. "Of course, sweetheart." Silence settled, but not weakness. A silence crafted with intention. A silence they mistook as surrender. And then I spoke the sentence that shifted the air in the room. "I trust you." Michael swallowed. "That means a lot." I leaned back and lifted the thimble slightly, feeling its familiar weight against my finger. "But trust," I said softly, "is not picking up a pen." 3 heads turned toward me. "Trust," I continued, voice steady, "is opening your eyes." Conrad stiffened. Luann frozen. Michael frowned. "Mom?" I smiled, small and devastating. "Let's all make sure we're seeing the same thing." Right on cue, the door opened. Priya stepped inside, holding a legal envelope. Naomi followed her, tablet in hand. Their presence shifted the balance of power like a tide going out. Michael stood abruptly. "What's going on?" Priya spoke, voice calm and lethal. "You invited Kendra to discuss paperwork. We're here to make sure she understands everything." Naomi tapped the tablet screen, and the room filled with Conrad and Luann's recorded voices. "I will continue adding a few drops. The doctors already think it's stress." Silence. The impact. Michael turned pale. Luann's hands started to shake. Conrad went completely still. I remained seated and steady, the thimble pressed against my pulse. The reversal had begun. The recorded voices echoed through the consultation lounge. "I will continue. Adding a few drops. The doctors already think it's stress." Michael stood frozen in horror. Conrad's jaw tightened. Luann stopped breathing. Priya pressed pause on Naomi's tablet. The silence afterward was louder than any screaming could have been. "We are moving to evidence preservation," Priya announced, her voice controlled and precise, effective immediately. Michael stepped back. "Evidence? What does that mean?" Priya turned to him with calm authority. "It means your wife may be the victim of intentional poisoning. We are now treating this as a legal and medical emergency." Luann blurted, "This is absurd. I was just—" "Quiet," Priya said, without raising her voice. And unbelievably, Luann obeyed. Priya reached for her phone and dialed. Her tone shifted, razor-sharp, professional. "Anton, it's Priya Patel. I need you in ICU 614. We are beginning a chain of custody." Within minutes, a doctor in a Navy lab coat strode down the hallway, tall, composed, presence commanding attention. His name badge read Dr. Anton Hale, Chief of Toxicology. He extended a hand toward me before addressing anyone else. "Mrs. Lowell, I understand you're the reporting family member. I'm here because you took action." No one had ever said those words to me in my life. Not "you're here because you sewed my costume. Now you're here because you held everything together. You took action." He turned toward Naomi. "Show me the IV bags." Naomi gestured to Autumn's room, and we all followed, except Conrad and Luann, who remained outside. blocked by security arriving on Priya's silent signal. We entered the room. Autumn lay still, her face vaguely blue from the ICU light. The IV drip continued releasing clear fluid into her bloodstream. I felt anger rise again. Not loud, not reactive, just sharp clarity. Dr. Hale studied the tubing, then nodded to Naomi. We proceed. Priya stepped beside him, opening a small case lined with red-sealed evidence labels. What we're doing now is chain of custody, Priya explained, speaking to me directly. It means every person who touches this IV bag is documented. No tampering, no excuses. She slipped on latex gloves. Naomi shut off the infusion pump. The room became quieter, but more focused, like the world itself held its breath. Dr. Hale clamped the IV line. This bag could hold trace contaminants. We'll run it through mass spectrometry. Michael hovered near the doorway, voice shaking. Are you saying my wife was poisoned through her IV? Priya answered without turning. We'll let the evidence speak. Naomi disconnected the bag with deliberate care. Priya held the evidence label open, and Dr. Hale slid the IV bag inside a sterile pouch, the red seal pressed closed with a satisfying click, like a judge's gavel. I stared at the seal, mesmerized, red. Not bright like Christmas, not dark, like blood, a boundary color, a line drawn between what is love and what is exploitation. Priya handed me a pen. Kendra, sign here, as the witness. I hesitated only 1 second before writing Kendra Lowell across the label, my letters bold and certain. Signing it felt like pressing a stamp onto my past. Everything I had swallowed, endured, minimized. The red seal glowed under the fluorescent lights. Dr. Hale spoke while marking the chain of custody form. This bag will be escorted to the toxicology lab under security supervision. No one touches it without forensic documentation. He looked up at me. You doing this may save her life. My throat tightened. I couldn't protect her from people she trusted. He shook his head gently. You're protecting her now. Priya turned toward Naomi. Retrieve the secondary line. Naomi opened a drawer under the IV stand and removed a backup bag still sealed in plastic, full untouched. Dr. Hale labeled it as control evidence. Priya sealed that bag too, red against clear plastic. 2 bags, 1 truth. Priya checked her watch. Security is ready. As if on cue, 2 uniformed officers appeared at the door, hands clasped behind them, professional and expressionless. This is Officer Ryan, Priya introduced. He will escort Dr. Hale and the IV bags to the lab. The officer stepped forward, accepting the evidence. Dr. Hale nodded once to me. You'll have preliminary results within hours. Then they disappeared down the hallway, carrying Autumn's truth away in a red-sealed pouch. Michael sank onto a chair, pale and trembling. I didn't know, he said to no one, to everyone. I didn't know. Naomi stood beside him. Manipulation works best on good people. His eyes filled with tears. Why would Luann? Why would anyone do this? Priya answered plainly. Financial motive. Control, resentment. I spoke quietly. She didn't want Autumn healed. She wanted her helpless. Michael covered his face with his hands. Through the glass, we could see security escorting Luann and Conrad into a private room for questioning. Conrad looked coldly analytical, calculating his next move. Luann finally cracked, screaming at a security officer while her mascara streaked down her cheeks. Still, I didn't move toward them. I didn't speak. I didn't gloat. Because justice was happening in silence. Naomi touched my elbow. Come sit with Autumn. I walked to her bedside and sat. Her skin was still cool, but not as icy as yesterday. The soft blanket Naomi had brought remained tucked around her shoulders. Her breathing was slow, each rise and fall like a fragile promise. My hand moved instinctively to reach for her, but I stopped, hovering. Because hovering was my language of care, protecting without disturbing. I opened my palm. The silver thimble sat there, small, simple, fearless. It was the first. Time in my life that the world moved because of a decision I made. Autumn, I whispered. The truth is sealed now. They can't hurt you anymore. Naomi rested a gentle hand on my back. You're stronger than you know. But I didn't feel strong. I felt steady, quiet, unshakable. Priya stepped beside me. What happens next is simple. We wait for the proof to confirm what we already know. And then? I asked. Then, she answered, we finish what you started. I looked at the sealed IV label again, the red line staring back like a boundary I finally learned how to draw. Love protects. Exploitation takes. And I had finally chosen which side I stood on. I didn't realize how much sound wires and machines could make until all I could do was listen. The steady pulse of the monitor, the faint hiss of the oxygen flow, the gentle click of the IV pump. Autumn lay still. I stayed beside her. Hours passed in a quiet battle between my patience and my fear. Then Naomi slipped back into the room with Priya. We just received confirmation, Priya said quietly. The lab found traces of benzodiazepines in the IV line. A sedative. Not enough to kill, but enough to push Autumn into helplessness. My chest tightened. So it's proven, Priya nodded. Legally and medically. She turned her tablet toward me. A screen displayed 3 things side by side. Audio recording of Luann admitting the drops. Video footage of Luann entering the supply room late at night. Lab results from the sealed IV line camera. Audio. Toxicology. Proof. Priya touched her screen, zooming in on the hallway video. There was Luann glancing around before approaching the medication refrigerator. My breath caught. We don't need to speculate anymore, Priya said. We have everything. Just then, the hallway camera showed something new. Luann walking toward Autumn's room, not with fear or remorse, with intention. Priya's jaw tightened. She thinks she can finish what she started. Naomi didn't wait. She pushed open the door and stepped into the hallway. I followed her, heart hammering against my ribs. Luann was standing by Autumn's IV pole, hand raised, fingers hovering near the tubing where a new bag now hung. Her voice was a whisper to herself. Just a little more, just to make sure. Don't touch the line. Naomi's voice cut through the corridor like glass. Luann jerked her hand away, but not fast enough. Naomi stepped closer, posture steady, calm, but deadly serious. This area is under evidence preservation, Naomi said. If you interfere, that becomes obstruction. Luann forced a shaky smile. I was just checking on my daughter. I'm her mother. Her mother. The title felt obscene in her mouth. Step away from the IV, Naomi repeated. A pair of security officers appeared at the far end of the hall, closing in. Slow, controlled, like a trap tightening. But then, another presence emerged from the corner. A woman in plain clothes, short dark hair, badge clipped to her belt. She didn't shout. She didn't rush. She just stood there with stillness so powerful it silenced everything. Detective Lynn Marquez, she said, holding up her badge. The air shifted. Priya joined her at her side. We have evidence for attempted medical endangerment. The toxicology report confirms. Luann cut her off. I did nothing wrong. Detective Marquez didn't raise her voice. She stepped closer, one slow step at a time, like a lion approaching a trembling rabbit. Then you won't mind answering a few questions. I want a lawyer, Luann snapped. Priya smiled, unbothered. You'll need one. Detective Marquez glanced at the IV pole, then at the camera overhead. She spoke so quietly, I almost missed it. But Luann heard. Everything you just did is on camera. Luann frozen. Her eyes darted to the lens in the corner of the room, a lens she had probably never noticed until this moment. The recording red light blinked. Detective Marquez nodded toward the IV pole. You approached the line. That alone triggers probable cause. Luann shook her head violently. No, I was just... Michael rushed in at that moment. He took in the scene, Naomi blocking the IV, Priya with her legal folder, a detective standing between Luann and escape. Mom? His voice was small. confused, broken. Luann turned to him, instantly switching roles, tears filling her eyes with supernatural speed. "Michael, please. They're twisting everything. I love Autumn." Michael looked like he wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. She placed a hand on his chest, manipulation disguised as tenderness. "You know me," she whispered. "I would never hurt my own daughter." Michael's gaze flickered, and then Priya touched the screen of her tablet. The audio played. "I will continue adding a few drops." Luann's face was drained of color. Michael stumbled back like the words physically struck him. "No," he whispered. "No, Mom." Detective Marquez stepped between them, her voice low. "Luann Pierce, you are being detained for questioning in connection with the attempted endangerment of a patient under medical care." Luann's breathing turned sharp and wild. "You can't do this. I was helping her. She doesn't know what's best for her." Detective Marquez moved forward, unbothered by the screeching. "Please place your hands in front of you." "I'm her mother!" Michael broke. "No," he whispered. "You were supposed to protect her." Naomi reached for my arm. Steady, grounding. I didn't speak. I didn't interfere. Because silence was the sharpest weapon I had ever learned to use. One of the security officers gently guided Luann down the hall. Her voice cracked, echoing off the sterile walls. "You're all making a mistake." Conrad, who had been silent until now, took one step back, calculating his escape. Detective Marquez turned. "Don't bother leaving, Mr. Pierce. You'll be next." This time his expression broke, but I didn't focus on him. My eyes returned to Autumn's room. Her chest rose, fell, steady. The final drop had been stopped. Naomi turned to me. "We're moving into the final phase. Now we help her wake up." I exhaled slowly, and the silver thimble pressed warm against my finger. I had spent my life stitching broken hems, patching rips, mending tears. Tonight I had stitched back a life, not with thread, but with truth. 2 weeks later, the courthouse felt colder than any hospital hallway. I stood outside courtroom 3B with Naomi on my right and Priya on my left. Michael sat alone on a bench across from us, elbows on his knees, hands clasped, staring down as if the floor might tell him what kind of man he really was. Autumn was recovering in the hospital. She was awake but weak, still piecing together the fragments of what happened. The toxicology report had confirmed everything. Repeated microdoses of sedatives, benzodiazepines, slipped into her drinks over time, and finally into an IV. Today's hearing wasn't a criminal trial yet. This was the emergency guardianship hearing, the legal battlefield where Conrad and Luann once thought they would seize control of Autumn's life and assets. Instead, today is where they would lose everything. I exhaled slowly. The silver thimble rested in my pocket, warm from my touch. I carried it not for sewing, but as a reminder of who I had been and who I had finally allowed myself to become. Priya touched my arm gently. "When you testify, look at the judge, not at them. Your truth isn't a conversation with criminals. It's a declaration to the court." Naomi nodded. "And remember, you are not alone." Michael finally lifted his head. He looked exhausted, grief and guilt carved into the lines of his face. "Mom," he whispered. I crossed the hallway toward my son. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," he finally said, "but I'm here because I want to earn it." He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, not physically, emotionally, like a child lost in a world too big. "You were manipulated," I said quietly, "but responsibility doesn't disappear just because someone influenced you." His voice cracked. "I almost let them hurt her." I placed a hand over his. "Don't live in the almost. Live in the now." Before he could answer, the bailiff appeared. "Parties for case 4872. Pierce and Lowell, please enter the courtroom." The courtroom was packed. Lawyers, hospital administration, even reporters. Word had leaked that the case involved medical tampering. A storm disguised as a hearing. Luann. sat at the defendant's table, wearing a soft cardigan and a sad expression, her concerned mother mask. Conrad sat beside her, rigid and expressionless, flipping through his legal pad as if this were a business meeting. On the opposite table sat Priya, Naomi, Dr. Anton Hale, and Detective Marquez. And me, the witness they never expected to speak. When the judge entered, everyone stood. She was a tall woman with silver hair pulled into a low bun, eyes razor-sharp with intelligence. Her presence alone demanded truth. "Good morning. This court is now in session." We sat. Priya rose. "Your Honor, we will prove that Luann Pierce and Conrad Pierce conspired to obtain guardianship over the victim, Autumn Pierce Lowell, using intentional medical endangerment to render her incapacitated." Luann flinched. Conrad remained stone-faced. The judge nodded. "Call your first witness." Priya turned to me. "Mrs. Kendra Lowell." My legs trembled only once, at the moment I stood. After that, purpose carried me. The bailiff asked, "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do." I sat in the witness chair, palms resting on my lap, silver thimble tucked safely in my pocket. Priya paced gently in front of me. "Mrs. Lowell, how do you know the victim?" "I'm her mother-in-law," I said, "but she called me Mom." A murmur rippled through the room. Priya nodded, voice softer. "And how would you describe your relationship with Autumn?" "She loved gently," I said. "She brought sweetness into rooms that forgot how to be kind." I swallowed the lump forming in my throat. "And when she was admitted to ICU, what did you observe?" "I saw a woman whose body was failing, but not because of illness." Luann shifted uncomfortably. Priya clicked the remote. A screen lowered at the front of the courtroom. Exhibit A, audio recording. The room filled with Luann's voice. "I will continue adding a few drops. The doctors already think it's stress." Gasps erupted. Luann's face was drained of color. Priya continued. Exhibit B, hallway surveillance. The video played. Luann approaches the medication refrigerator, removing a vial, walking toward Autumn's room. Not once did her expression show grief, only calculation. The judge's gaze hardened. Priya faced me again. "Mrs. Lowell, why didn't you intervene immediately when you heard that conversation?" This was the heart of my story. I sat taller. "Because silence," I said, "was the only way to save Autumn." The courtroom stilled. I continued. "When people have power, confrontation feeds them. Silence confuses them." Priya paused. "Can you explain what changed inside you that night?" I reached into my pocket and placed the silver thimble on the witness stand. For 40 years, I thought my role was to stay quiet, to be useful without taking space. I looked at Luann, not with hatred, but clarity. But silence is not surrender. Silence is timing. Priya froze, just for a beat, struck by the words. The courtroom leaned in. I repeated, slower this time. "Silence is not giving up. Silence is choosing the moment." But the next line was the one that cracked the air like a gavel. The judge blinked slowly, absorbing it. Priya gestured toward the evidence. "And at the right moment, what did you do?" I signed the paperwork that allowed the hospital to seal the IV line and secure the evidence. Priya retrieved the evidence pouch from the table and held up the red sealed bag. Exhibit C, toxicology results. Dr. Hale took the stand next. He explained the lab findings, systematic dosing with sedatives. Detective Marquez followed, presenting digital timestamps, access logs, and supply room footage. Conrad shifted in his chair, jaw tight. He knew the chain was unbreakable now. Finally, Priya called Michael. My son walked slowly to the witness stand. He looked at Luann first, then at me, and his voice trembled. "I didn't protect my wife because I believed the wrong people." Luann's face twisted. "Michael, sweetheart?" He cut her off. "No, don't call me that. You drugged her." The courtroom held its breath. Michael looked at me, eyes filled with remorse. "And I almost gave you Mom's house because you made me believe I owed you loyalty." That landed like thunder. He continued, voice breaking. "But loyalty without truth is slavery." Luann lowered her head, shaking. Conrad finally spoke, his calm mask cracking. "Michael, she agreed with the plan." Michael turned cold. "You manipulated everyone." Priya stepped forward, final blow ready. "Your Honor, the hospital requests permanent removal of Luann Pierce and Conrad Pierce from medical guardianship consideration, along with a restraining order and legal initiation of criminal investigation." The judge looked at Luann. "Do you have anything to say?" Luann stood, tears smearing her mascara. "Everything I did for Autumn." I stood, unable to stay seated. "No," I said quietly. "You did it to control her." The judge raised a hand. "Order." Then she delivered the sentence. "Emergency guardianship is granted to Kendra Lowell and Michael Lowell. Further criminal charges will proceed. The court is adjourned." Her gavel struck once. Luann sobbed. Conrad stared blankly, realizing power had slipped through his fingers. Michael turned to me. "I'm so sorry." I placed the thimble into his palm. "Don't be sorry, be better." He nodded, tears falling. As we left the courtroom, Naomi squeezed my shoulder. "You didn't just speak," she said. "You changed the outcome." Priya smiled warmly. "Some battles are won with evidence, others with courage." "You brought both," I looked. Out the courthouse windows, sunlight breaking through clouds like a promise. Autumn was safe. The truth had been spoken, under oath, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't silent. Hospitals have their own kind of dawn, not sunlight, not birdsong, just the gradual softening of machines, the subtle shift from night staff to day staff, and the faint aroma of burnt coffee drifting through the halls. 2 weeks after the hearing, I sat in the same ICU chair. Same room, same steady beeping of monitors. But everything had changed. No guards at the door, no fear of who might walk in, no waiting for danger, just waiting for her, Autumn. She had been slowly improving, the toxins leaving her system, her body learning how to exist without artificial sedation. But she hadn't opened her eyes for more than a few seconds at a time, drifting back into sleep before any words could form. Michael had stepped away to shower, exhausted from staying overnight. He finally trusted me enough to leave. The morning light filtered through the blinds, making soft stripes across Autumn's blanket. I reached for her hand, still cool but not glass cold anymore. There was color returning to her skin, a whisper of warmth. Naomi peeked through the door. "I brought fresh pillows." I smiled. "Thank you." She nodded toward Autumn. "She's getting stronger. Healing isn't loud, it's quiet the way dawn arrives." She left us alone. I leaned forward, brushing a strand of hair from Autumn's forehead. Her eyelashes fluttered, then stilled. Her breathing deepened. "Whenever you're ready," I whispered. I wasn't in a hurry. For once in my life, time didn't feel like an enemy. I rested my palm lightly near her hand, not touching the IV, not interrupting, just presence. Just the kind of company I once believed had no value because it wasn't flashy or loud. The heart monitor hummed on. Then, her fingers twitched. A tiny, faint movement. I held my breath. Her eyelids trembled, heavy and uncertain, like the world might still be too bright. Slowly, painfully, they opened. Her gaze was unfocused, drifting as though she were searching her way back through a long tunnel. I leaned forward, steady and soft. "Hi, sweetheart." Her lips parted, dry and pale. No sound came out at first. I reached for the straw in the cup on the bedside table and held it to her lips. She sipped, small and careful. Then her voice, broken, fragile, pushed through. How did you get here?" Her question sliced into me, as if love needed permission. "As soon as I knew you needed me, I ran." Autumn blinked slowly, tears forming. "They said you weren't coming. They said you didn't care." There it was, the poison that had nothing to do with drugs. I shook my head. "You were never alone." She swallowed. I was so scared." "I know." Her hand shifted, searching for something to hold. She brushed. My wrist, tentative, unsure. Instead of gripping her hand, I reached into my jacket pocket. The silver thimble rested in my palm, the symbol of quiet labor, of patching what was torn, of repairing what was abandoned, of women like me who hold worlds together without applause. Softly, I placed the thimble into her hand and curled her fingers around it. Her eyes widened, confused. "What?" I whispered. "I couldn't stop what others broke, but I could stitch your life back together with the truth." Her tears spilled, not theatrical, not from shock, from recognition, from belonging. Her voice cracked. "You saved me." "No," I corrected gently. "You held on long enough to be saved." I watched her stare at the thimble, thumb brushing over the worn metal. It was small, unimpressive, just like me, and yet somehow it became the most powerful object in the room. I thought. Autumn blinked hard, words stumbling. "I thought I had to be strong alone." "You never did," I answered. "You just needed someone who saw you." Her chest rose shakily. "You came." "I will always come." She closed her eyes, not to sleep, but to absorb. The weight of being believed, a gift she had almost forgotten existed. I adjusted her blanket, smoothing the edges. The simple motherly motions that once defined me now felt like acts of quiet rebellion. This time I wasn't doing them because they were expected. I was doing them because I chose to. Her voice was thin but sure. "Can you stay?" I smiled, brushing her hair away from her forehead. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be." The door opened again. Michael stepped into the room, breath catching when he saw her awake. "Autumn?" She tried to smile. "Hi." He moved to her other side and held her free hand, eyes full of regret. "I am so sorry. I should have protected you." Autumn looked at him, then at me. "You did. Both of you." I shook my head slightly. "You protected her by surviving. The three of us stayed like that, quiet, steady, connected, not with grand gestures, but with presence. Healing is not fireworks. It is the slow rebuilding of trust. It is allowing love back into the room." Naomi reappeared briefly in the doorway. She didn't speak. She didn't interrupt. She just smiled, soft, proud, relieved, before disappearing again. Autumn squeezed the thimble in her palm. "Will you teach me how to sew?" she whispered. I felt something warm open inside me. A beginning. "Of course," I said. She closed her eyes again, this time not out of weakness, but peace. As she drifted back to rest, her fingers stayed wrapped around the thimble, holding on, claiming her life back stitch by stitch, and for the first time in decades, I understood my own worth. I had not just been sewing fabric, I had been stitching people, quietly, invisibly, completely. Autumn exhaled, steady and calm, I whispered, into the soft space between us. "You are safe, and this time, silence belongs to us." 3 months after Autumn woke up, spring arrived like forgiveness. The cherry trees near the hospital burst into bloom, scattering white petals across the sidewalks like confetti from a celebration no one planned. Autumn was walking again. Her voice grew stronger each day. Her laughter, quiet and still recovering, returned to the world one breath at a time. But the biggest change wasn't hers, it was mine. I stood on the front lawn of my house, a house that had held decades of sacrifice, and watched strangers carry boxes through the doorway. My doorway. The porch railing still had the dent from when Michael fell off his bike at 7. The kitchen wall still showed the faint outline where we marked his height every year. I wasn't selling it because I had been pressured to. I was selling it because I had outgrown the version of myself who lived here. Michael stood beside me, hands in his pockets. He didn't offer opinions. He didn't make decisions for me. He didn't try to convince me to stay or go. He simply stood beside me, growing. When the final box was loaded, the realtor handed me a folder. "The wire transfer is complete, Mrs. Lowell. Congratulations." Michael turned to me, eyes soft. "Mom, are you sure about this? You don't have to prove anything." I smiled. "I know, that's exactly why I'm doing it." When I first heard the idea of selling my home, it was manipulation. Now, it was freedom. I signed the last paper, closed the folder, and placed the silver thimble on top of it for a moment, just long enough to feel it, to honor what had carried me here. Michael reached for the box. "Let me carry that to your car." I touched his arm. "Walk with me. Don't carry it. I'm not someone who needs saving." He nodded, really nodded, absorbing the lesson he should have learned years ago. "I'm walking with you," he said. "Not ahead. Not instead." He didn't take the box. I lifted it myself. My new home wasn't large. It wasn't filled with ghosts of duty or expectation. The windows were enormous, and the sunlight hit the hardwood floor like soft water. Naomi helped me unpack the kitchen first. She was terrible at folding dish towels, but she made me laugh, and that was worth more than perfection. "Where do we put this?" she asked, holding up a mug with the words, "Strong women raise themselves," printed in gold lettering. "Top shelf," I said. "Some reminders don't need to be within reach every day." Naomi snorted. Deep. We were still laughing when the doorbell rang. Priya entered, balancing folders and a bottle of lemonade. "Housewarming gift. I figured champagne sends mixed messages in a story involving IV lines." "You're not wrong," Naomi muttered. We gathered around my small dining table. No one performed. No one pretended. For the first time in years, I felt like I was sitting with people who saw me, not as a resource, not as a background character, but as a woman who had built a life from silence and then learned to speak. Priya opened a folder and slid it toward me. "This is the proposal for the support group," she said. I paused, fingertips grazing the edge of the document. "Support circle for women who feel invisible. No judgment, no pressure, no heroism required." I whispered, "I can't believe this is real." Naomi nudged me gently. "You started it the moment you stood up in court." Autumn had suggested the name, the House of Light, not because I saved her, because together we stopped pretending that quietness meant weakness. Michael arrived later with folding chairs and a box of tea. When he stepped inside, he didn't take charge, didn't ask what needed fixing. He simply set the chairs down and asked, "Where do you want them?" I pointed. "There." He nodded and followed. That was enough. When the chairs were set, he pulled me aside. "Mom, I want to do better," he said. "Not by fixing things for you, by being someone worth walking beside." I touched his cheek, not like the little boy he once was, but like the man he was finally choosing to become. "I don't need perfection," I said, "just presence." He swallowed, teary-eyed. "I can do that." For the first time in a long time, I believed him. That evening, the first meeting of the House of Light began. Women filtered in, some young, some older, some carrying grief like a second heartbeat. They took seats in the folding chairs Michael had set up. Naomi handed out tissues like party favors. Priya opened her notebook. I stood no differently than I once did beside the ICU bed or in the courtroom. But now, I stood for myself. I shared my story, not with trembling, not with fear. I told it calmly, like someone who had finally learned her own value. "I used to think silence was surrender," I said, "but I learned something." I held up the silver thimble in my palm. "Silence can also be preparation." The women leaned in. "Sometimes," I continued, "we aren't quiet because we're scared. We're quiet because we are gathering strength." A woman in the back wiped her eyes. Another nodded, clutching a tissue to her mouth. Michael leaned against the doorway, listening, not inserting himself, just witnessing. And when the group began speaking, one voice at a time, I thought of Autumn's first words after waking. "How did you get here?" The answer had always been simple. I got there because I chose myself, because I finally walked toward the life I deserved, because I understood that visibility isn't volume, it's value. As the meeting ended, the room felt warm, full of gentle conversation and soft comfort. Naomi hugged me first. "You built this." Priya squeezed my hand. "You earned this." Michael kissed my forehead. "I'm learning from this." I stood at the center of my small home, light catching the window, the thimble resting in my palm like a quiet crown, and I felt the fullness of something I had never known. Peace. Not silence. Peace. The kind that comes when a woman finally realizes her worth isn't proved by sacrifice. It's proved by choosing herself. My new home faced the ocean. Not metaphorically, literally. When I open the back door, I step onto a small wooden deck that overlooks the Pacific. In the late afternoon, the sea turns silver, like it's wearing my thimbles color. The air carries salt and possibility. Waves don't shout their power. They arrive, withdraw, return. Quiet strength in motion. Like me. On this particular evening, the sky was lavender, soft, tender, after a long day of hosting our women's group. The folding chairs were still stacked by the wall, smelling faintly of jasmine tea and courage. Autumn had joined us via video call. She looked radiant, hair braided loosely, cheeks full of life. When she saw the house, she whispered, "It feels like light lives here." I set my small lantern beside the sliding glass door. It was made of frosted glass, delicate and warm when lit. A symbol Naomi gave me the night we filed the legal charges. "For your new beginning," she had said. As the sun slid behind the water, I struck a match and lit the lantern. The flame flared, then steadied, tiny, yet certain. The reflection shimmered on the glass like a heartbeat. Behind me, I heard footsteps on the deck. Michael stepped outside, carrying 2 mugs of chamomile tea. He handed one to me. "Mom," he said gently, "you did something incredible." I shook my head. "No, we did." He leaned on the railing, looking toward the horizon. "I'm still learning how to be a good son. You don't have to be perfect," I said. "You just have to be present." His voice broke a little. "I almost let her hurt Autumn, and I almost let them use you." "You were in the dark," I said. "Darkness can make a person believe anything." He exhaled shakily. "And now?" "Now," I smiled. "You're beginning to see." He didn't reply with words. He simply rested his hand over mine, not to lead or to pull, just to stand beside me, right where he should be. After he went inside, I remained on the deck, listening to the tide roll in and out, listening to my own breathing, listening to a world that finally gave space for my stillness. The sea breeze lifted my hair. The lantern's glow warmed my cheek. For decades, silence had been my cage. But now, silence was my choice. Earlier that day, after everyone left, I found the silver thimble still resting on the table. I picked it up and rolled it between my fingers. The metal felt cool and reassuring. I thought about every time I had worn it, every hem I stitched, every tear I mended, every wound I held quietly. The thimble wasn't just a sewing tool. It was a witness. To a woman who once believed she existed only to repair others. A woman who never believed she had the right to repair herself. I slipped it into my pocket, the place where strength now lived. The waves were gentle that night, but steady. The lantern's light flickered against the sliding glass window, painting soft gold patterns on the wood. I sat down on the deck's edge, legs dangling over the sand. How strange that the world had once felt so small, limited to one house, one son, one identity. I spent years folding myself smaller so others could feel big. And yet, the moment I chose myself, the world expanded. Autumn flourished. Michael grew. Women found community. Justice was served without screaming. Quiet doesn't mean powerless. Quiet means intentional. I let my breath fall into the rhythm of the waves. The tide pulled in, paused, and returned, like stitching, forward, back, forward, repairing the shore the way I had repaired lives. My phone buzzed. A text from Naomi. "How's the lantern?" I smiled and typed back, steady, another buzz from Priya. "Remember, you didn't become stronger. You simply stopped shrinking." I put the phone down and let the words sink into the evening. As the sky deepened into blue, a final breeze brushed my cheek. Soft, cool, familiar. I remembered a moment in the courtroom when the judge looked directly at me as she read the verdict. "You protected her." No one had ever said words like that to me before. I looked at the lantern, glowing against the darkening deck. Protection doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it seals an IV line under a red chain of custody label. Sometimes it stands on a witness stand and speaks the truth without raising its voice. The moon rose, white and full. I opened the sliding door and set the lantern inside the windowsill from the outside ledge, the warm glow filling my home from within. Not a warning, a welcome, a beacon for anyone who has ever been silenced. I whispered, not to the waves, but to the younger version of myself, the one who stayed small because she thought love required shrinking. You were always allowed to take up space. The lantern answered with a steady flame. Softly, I spoke the words I wished someone had said to me sooner. If you are staying silent just to keep someone, ask yourself this. I lifted the lantern, watching its glow paint gold across the glass. Do they keep you? I breathed in salt and new beginnings. Then I turned to the audience the way I turned to the women in our circle, offering the question that changed my life. If you are silent to keep someone, ask yourself, do they keep you? I looked straight into the camera of the world that will someday watch this story and asked, where do you think I was wrong? Leave your thoughts in the comments.